Hi, I'm Mason, a GRE expert at Magoosh. I'm going to share with you some tips and techniques that helped me score a 6 on the AWA Essays. But first, let me welcome you to Mason's Corner for Writers. This corner is a cozy space for writers who are trying to improve on the GRE AWA essays to come hang out, sip some coffee, chat, and learn some step-by-step approaches to improving their writing and their scores on the AWA essays. It's kind of like that cafe in Paris where Sartre and Camus used to hang out and chat, although with more dogs and hopefully with fewer existential crises. The topic du jour is the AWA Argument Essay. I'm going to break this task down into some smaller, more accomplishable steps so that you can go from panicked and flustered to cool, calm, and caffeinated on the GRE. Step 1, get clear on what the AWA Argument Essay is and what it is not. The AWA Argument Essay is not a test of your literary ability. Rather, it's a timed exercise in which we're asked to critically evaluate and analyze an argument. ETS is giving us this argument, which is typically around one paragraph long, as well as a set of instructions on how to approach that argument and write about it. But more on that in just a minute. We are not deciding which side of the argument is right or wrong. We are not supplying our own argument or our own opinions and beliefs. And finally, we are not criticizing the argument. What we are doing on this exercise is we are identifying the flaws of the argument, we are communicating dispassionately about the argument, and finally, we are critiquing or evaluating the argument, which is a little bit different than criticizing. Here's how I like to think about this exercise. So imagine you have a friend who sends you an email saying, hey, I've got this big assignment due. I'm sending this to my boss later this week. Can you help me improve my argument so that I look good in front of my boss, right? So think about it that way. You're trying to help your friend out, identifying areas in their argument where, hey, maybe you could work on this or improve it, supply some more facts or some evidence. That's what you're really trying to do here, is look for those weak spots in the argument and help improve them. Now, keep in mind, this is a timed exercise. You only have 30 minutes, so you are not responsible for pointing out absolutely every single flaw in the argument. Rather, find 2 or 3 flaws that you feel confident and comfortable writing about, and those are going to become your essay. Step number 2, break down the prompt first before you start writing. I mentioned earlier that every argument comes with a little prompt next to it that we should pay attention to. The prompt is basically a short set of instructions on how you should think about and write your essay. Let's take a look at an example. Write a response in which you discuss what specific evidence is needed to evaluate the argument and explain how the evidence would weaken or strengthen the argument. While every single AWA argument essay will be asking you to critically evaluate and analyze an argument, they also give us some more specific directions that we should really pay attention to. So in this last example, we need to find specific evidence that would have to be brought forth and talk about how that evidence would either strengthen or weaken the argument. So before you start just sort of sweating bullets and pounding out words trying to get this essay over as quickly as possible, it's wise to read that prompt a few times and pay attention to the specific language that we should use. So, for example, if they want us to write about evidence, talk about evidence. If they want you to talk about assumptions, talk about assumptions. If they want you to talk about consequences, okay, look, you get the picture. Now, it might feel like a limitation that you have to follow these specific instructions, but it's actually a gift. Keep in mind that there's probably 1,000 different ways to dissect and analyze an argument, but ETS does not expect that from us. Rather, they want us to look at this argument through one specific lens, whether that's evidence or assumptions or consequences, and write about it, which is way more accomplishable in 30 minutes. So, big takeaway number 1 is read those prompts, read it several times, get clear on the specific language you have to use before you start your writing. That brings us to step number 3. Set aside 3 to 5 minutes for brainstorming. Look, I know the feeling all too well. You're pumped up to sit down and take a practice test or a real test. Your adrenaline's flowing. You just want to get started and dive in and crush it. The very first section you're going to work on is the AWA writing exercise. So when that first essay opens and the timer starts running, it can be so tempting just to start putting words on the page as fast and as much as you possibly can, but that's typically a mistake. ETS is not expecting quantity on these essays. What they want to see is quality shine through. They want to see that you've carefully read and considered that argument and the prompt, and that you have a clear structure in your thought and in your writing that reflects that. Now, we're going to talk more about that structure in a minute, but really the best way to avoid just throwing words on the page and hoping a Jackson Pollock-esque masterpiece somehow emerges is to give yourself about 3 to 5 minutes to brainstorm. Brainstorming involves breaking down the prompt and also carefully considering the argument and looking for flaws. We want to take that argument, pull it apart into some smaller pieces, and probe each individual one for weaknesses. We want to be the ultimate skeptics, taking zero for granted, always looking for holes or questions or assumptions that we can use in our essay. For each statement or piece of information in the argument, you might want to ask one or more of the following questions. How do we know this is true? What kind of evidence would be needed to prove this statement is true? Are there any alternative explanations to what we're seeing in the argument? Does the argument rely on any assumptions in order to be true? Are there any unforeseen consequences of the argument? Is it possible all of this is taking place in the matrix and none of this is real? Okay, maybe that last one's a little bit extreme, but the point here is that you want to be annoyingly skeptical when it comes to breaking down the argument, because the more skeptical you are, the more flaws you're going to identify. Once you've isolated 2 or 3 flaws that you feel comfortable and confident writing about, you're ready to go. It's time to unleash those ideas onto the page, but in like a controlled, structured kind of way. Just a second, friends. Some of you might be thinking, wow, it's really hard for me to write this kind of essay, even in a very quiet, controlled testing center. What if I have to take this test at home? How am I possibly going to write in that kind of chaotic environment? Well, don't worry. We actually have a great video full of some tips and some advice from someone who's taken the GRE at home to walk you through that process and help you stay cool and controlled on your writing. So head over to that video after this for more information on that subject. Where were we? Yes. Step number 4, meet your best AWA friend, structure. Now, I wish I could say that structure was the name of an adorable squirrel who sits on your shoulder and talks to you and cheers you on while you write your essay, but alas, structure is not nearly that exciting, although it is far more useful in my opinion. As you draft your essay, you want to have in mind what we call the 5-paragraph structure. Paragraph 1 is your introduction. Paragraphs 2, 3, and possibly 4 are your body paragraphs. And paragraph 5 is your conclusion. This structure is very popular in academic writing, and for good reason. It helps you organize your thoughts and helps your reader stay aboard your train of thinking as you guide them through the major flaws of the argument in your essay. Let's talk about your introduction and conclusion paragraphs first. Both of these paragraphs should be fairly short, and the major purpose is just to say that the argument as written doesn't stand because of the major flaws that you've identified. So you don't have to spend a lot of time in either paragraph saying that, because most of the heavy lifting you're going to do is going to be found in your body paragraphs. That's where you're actually exploring, explaining, and analyzing the flaws that you've identified for your reader. Each body paragraph you write should be focused around just one flaw that you've identified. Just one. Hopefully during brainstorming you came up with a handful of different flaws you could discuss, but we want to make sure that in developing our essay, we explore each point thoroughly and clearly. Remember, we're not after quantity here, we are after quality always. Each body paragraph should flow something like this. 1. Introduce the flaw. 2. Provide an example that demonstrates the flaw or provides an alternative explanation. 3. Use the rest of your body paragraph to explain and analyze why this flaw weakens the argument and what evidence would need to be provided or questions need to be answered in order to strengthen it. Sounds easy, right? Not quite. This is where practicing your writing is going to become super crucial. Developing your thoughts into coherent and seamless paragraphs is not an easy thing to do, especially under timed pressure. However, having a structure in mind for your essay and for each body paragraph should help take some of that pressure off. It's kind of like building a house. You wouldn't want to start building a house without a blueprint. So think about this structure as your blueprint that helps free your mind up to focus on other things, such as spelling, grammar, and sentence construction, which are all important to getting a high score on the AWA. Step number 5, read, 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 write, write, write. While understanding the AWA Argument Essay, understanding how to brainstorm, how to structure your essay are all super crucial to making big gains, there's a lot to be said about actually practicing your writing. Being able to sit down and to write clearly and concisely is a crucial skill for getting an above average score on the AWA. So you need to be working on these skills constantly, and that's going to involve some reading. The best writers I know also happen to be the most dedicated and voracious readers that I know. And this is not a mistake. I learned how to write and I got my 6 on the AWA mostly by reading the words of writers who are a lot better than I am. So make sure you're setting aside some time in your study plan for reading. That could be reading news articles, journals, academic publications. The more analytical the content, the better, but honestly, any reading is going to be better than no reading at all. The good news is, we here at Magoosh have already put together a fantastic blog post full of some recommendations for where you can go for reading practice. Not only will these reading materials help fine-tune your ear for good grammar and spelling and sentence construction, they're also going to help your ability to comprehend articles written in an academic tone and voice, which is hugely helpful on both the AWA and the verbal sections as well. So check out this blog post right after this video. Thank you for joining me today at Mason's Corner for Writers. Read lots, write even more, and always remember that we at Magoosh are here to help you keep your cool on the GRE. Subscribe to this channel, drop a comment below, and keep your eyes open for another invitation to Mason's Corner for Writers. Au revoir.